Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah wa ba'd. It's natural for people to ask questions. If you think about children, they naturally ask questions about the world. And this is actually healthy if they ask in the right way and they ask to understand. So when it comes to fasting in the month of Ramadan, it is perfectly fine and perfectly healthy to ask the question about why we fast in Ramadan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in Surah Al-Baqarah, He says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, you who believe, kutiba alaykumus siyam, fasting has been prescribed for you. Kama kutiba ala allazina min qablikum, the way it was prescribed for those before you, la'allakum tattaqoon, so that you might perhaps become mindful of Allah. So if we look at this concept that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us in the same verse about fasting, that you have to fast, He said the reason why you fast. If we just focus on that for a moment and we say, how do we teach Islam sometimes? Sometimes the way in which we teach Islam to our children, to others in Sunday school, is that the way in which we convey things is that you have to do this because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said so. And you're not, and basically any question about the reasoning why or the greater understanding why is shut down. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not say, "O you who believe, fasting has been prescribed for you because I am your Lord and I said so." You don't see that. But you see instead Allah giving us an understanding of there's a purpose behind why you fast, and this is the objective. Now if we want to achieve the objective, first of all we look at the la'allakum. La'allakum means, the word la'alla means so that, or it means perhaps, meaning it's possible, maybe it's probable, but it's not guaranteed. And that's very important for us because as human beings we always think in cause and effect terms. We think if I do this, then this outcome is going to happen. If I achieve this, then this thing is going to happen. But there's actually 3 ingredients for success in any single thing that you do. Even in the most hard sciences. Let's say you have a headache. And you say, you know what? If I take this medicine, my headache is going to go away. This is the way in which we think of things. What we don't realize is that there's 3 elements. The first element is that you follow the prescription. So if you go to the doctor, it's really bad, let's say you have migraine or something, and they give you a prescription of a medicine. If you go to the pharmacy and you say, you give them, you get a completely different medicine than the one that they prescribed you. Is that going to be good for your headache? No, it's not going to work. You have to, number 1, follow the prescription that's given to you. Allah is giving us a prescription of becoming a person of taqwa, of becoming somebody who becomes more mindful of Allah, but that we should be fasting in the month of Ramadan. That's the only element number 1. We got to follow the prescription. Element number 2 is we have to have the right intention. We have to have the right mindset. Now this applies not only in fasting, it even applies in medicine. So if you go and you take that medicine and somebody prescribes it to you and you think that your doctor hates you or your pharmacist hates you, and they actually put some poison inside the medicine, and now you're about to take it and you're suspicious and you say, you know what, I think this doctor's trying to kill me. There's an effect that's going to take place that's going to mess up the medicine for you. Many of you have heard of the placebo effect. There's also something called the nocebo effect. The nocebo effect is that if you believe something is going to harm you on a very strong level, it actually, your mind starts to think that this thing is harming you, it will harm you. Very high probability it's going to harm you. The same thing happens when it comes to fasting. Allah has given us a prescription of fasting. And if you don't think that this fasting is going to do anything for you, or if you're sitting there and you're sinning left and right and you're not following the prescription properly and your mentality is not there, you don't have the right mentality when you're fasting, the fasting is not going to automatically lead to taqwa just because you followed the outward prescription. You did not follow the inward prescription. And the third element that's required for somebody to achieve the benefits in anything is tawfiq from Allah. Tawfiq from Allah means that Allah gives you the ability for this cause to have this effect. Tawfiq means like success. But success in this context is extremely important. Because you can sit there, we live in a culture today, a very self-help culture, right? Which is nothing wrong with that genre. But the self-help culture is, if I do X, Y, and Z, it will automatically result in this outcome. If I put my mind to something, I can accomplish anything. This is the mentality. And if I do this and I do this, it's gonna happen this way. And you know what? Sometimes you do every single thing that you're supposed to do, and you don't get the outcome that you want. Why? Because you didn't have tawfiq from Allah. And sometimes you don't even follow the formula. You don't even you don't apply for the job in the right way. Sometimes you mess up in the thing that you're doing, and Allah still gives you tawfiq out of rahmah, out of mercy from Himself. So لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. If we want to become people of taqwa, and we want the fasting to make us people of taqwa, we need to have these three elements. And lastly, what is taqwa? Just a reminder. Taqwa means that you are conscious and aware and afraid of breaking the commandments of Allah. Basically, you know that we all know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching every single thing. This is very simple intellectually. I know Allah sees everything. But when you're in the middle of something, and you're thinking about sinning, you're thinking about saying something, and you go and you look around, you make sure nobody else is looking, you pull out your phone, and you think nobody can see you. That is exactly when the knowledge, the intellectual knowledge, has to be in your heart. It has to come aware, and you have to, in that moment, you have to remember that Allah is watching. That is taqwa. That is taqwa. And fasting is supposed to bring us to that state if we follow it correctly. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us among people who have taqwa. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us to fulfill our fasting in the best way. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us tawfiq in this month of Ramadan and in our fasting. Ameen. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum.